Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inconvenient Truths. I'm your host, Jennifer Zeng. A lot of people now believe that China's economy is entering or has entered a depression. However, would you believe it if someone told you that the CCP is intentionally putting China's economy into a state of depression? If this is the case, what will happen in China's economy, politics, and society in the future? Given the vast scope of this topic, I will be dedicating 3 episodes to discussing it in detail. The idea that the CCP was deliberately choosing to send China's economy into depression in order to maintain its power was put forward by a Chinese economist called Lao Man. His views and arguments are summarized as follows. First, from the past history of mankind, industrial civilization is the natural enemy of totalitarian regimes, and the two cannot coexist for a long time. The essence of industrial civilization is the trading of commodities, and trading must be based on freedom and fairness in order to be maintained in the long run. Therefore, it is impossible for a dictatorship to maintain a free and fair market environment in the long run. It must prioritize the protection of the interests of a small group of people, and as a result, it will surely infringe upon the interests of the majority of the people, thereby destroying the market and in turn destroying the industrial civilization. The examples he cited include Germany before World War II, the former Soviet Union, and Argentina. The history of these countries shows that the totalitarian model and the industrial civilization can only coexist for one generation at most. And after that generation, there will be an ultimate moment when only one of the two can survive. Second, looking at the path that China has taken in the past decade, almost all of the major policies related to the economy has been wrong, such as the one size fits all environmental policy, the 3-year zero COVID lockdowns, the destruction of education and training industry, growing rice on the mountains, etc. Moreover, these wrong policies were all deliberately pushed from the top down, and even in the face of serious negative consequences, they were not stopped. From a probabilistic perspective, if a person does not know the right answer, then the probability of making a mistake in a choice is 50%. Conversely, the probability of making 8 consecutive mistakes is 50% to the eighth power, which is only 0.00939, a very small number. This means that from a probabilistic perspective, if the reason for making a mistake every time is that the person does not know the right answer, then the probability of this is close to zero. In other words, the CCP cannot be unaware of the right answer. It is precisely because they know the right answer that they're able to choose the wrong answer every time. This proves from a probabilistic perspective that the CCP is deliberately trying to ruin the economy. With this conclusion in mind, let us look back at how far China has come over the years and then weigh the validity of this conclusion. China launched its reform and opening up in the 1980s. At that time, China was still a purely agricultural country, in fact. In the national employment population, the proportion of the agricultural population was 69%, and the proportion of the industrial population was only 18%. After that, China's industrialization path was difficult. In 1990, the proportion of the agricultural population was still as high as 60%, and the proportion of the industrial population was 21%. In 2000, when China entered the new century, the proportion of the agricultural population was still as high as 50%, and the proportion of the industrial population was still only 23%. Until 2000, China had not completed decent industrialization, nor had it been able to produce a real demand for a free and fair market environment, and therefore did not have a real demand for political system reform. Then, at the end of 2001, China joined the WTO, and the basic manufacturing industry of Europe and the US quickly shifted to China. This was followed by China's golden decade of rapid economic development, and the level of China's industrialization rapidly improved. By 2014, China's agricultural population was 222 million, and the industrial population was 231 million. The industrial population has since surpassed the agricultural population. And at this moment, it means that China has entered the industrial civilization era. After that, the issue of freedom and fairness and the topic of political system reform suddenly became the most important issue facing the CCP. If it wanted to maintain its power, it had to sacrifice industrial civilization. How do you think the CCP would choose? It didn't have any hesitation to choose to maintain its power at that time, and this is why all of its major economic policies in the past decade have been wrong. So how does intentional depression get here? Let's look at it from the following aspects. First, it was to do a good job of packaging, pretending to develop the economy and catching up with Europe and the US so that ordinary people were enthusiastic and full of illusions, and they did not realize that the cruel fate of deindustrialization was about to come, which reduced the possible social resistance to the lowest. Therefore, the CCP has set the goal of surpassing the US by 2050 and has fabricated some grand industrial development plans that will never be implemented. But in fact, the CCP really wanted to do was to empty the pockets of the people, turn all the net wealth that the people had accumulated in the past 30 years of hard work into net debt, and let the people lose their abilities to invest or to start new businesses. They can only become debt-driven cowards who worked hard and did not dare to complain in the slightest. How can this be achieved? This is the second thing we need to talk about: driving the real estate market bubble and stimulating people to buy houses. In 2014, when the Chinese real estate market showed signs of decline and the original small bubble began to burst, the CCP introduced the so-called real estate destocking policy. Banks, trusts, and funds lent money to real estate companies desperately, and the banks tried their best to encourage people to buy homes on a mortgage. The more expensive, the better. As a result, the bubble was quickly inflated. with the annual sales of housing rising from 7.6 trillion yuan in 2014 to 18.2 trillion yuan in 2021. At this point, people's wallets had been emptied and they had no more power to support the market. As a result, the bubble burst immediately and the market shrank rapidly. Sales of properties fell to a level of 13.3 trillion in 2022, while in 2023 it shrank further to 11.66 trillion yuan. This is already roughly back to the 2016 level. And we can easily predict that the market will continue to shrink significantly this year. It is also important to note that when real estate was destocked in 2015, the CCP pulled out real money and the annual real estate loans rose rapidly from 5 trillion US dollars in 5 trillion yuan in 2015 to 7 trillion in 2016 and then peaked at 9 trillion in 2020. However, in 2023, along with the bursting of the real estate bubble, although the CCP shouted out numerous slogans to save the real estate market, it did not invest any real money in it. So the reality is the CCP paid real money to blow up the real estate bubble. And when the bubble burst, it was unwilling to save it. That is to say, the CCP intentionally blew up the real estate bubble, then let it burst at a high level, and then pretended to make a gesture to save the market, and in reality, it is waiting for the whole market to die on its own accord. The third thing that must be done was to quietly drive away foreign-funded enterprises. Foreign capital was originally the driving force behind China's industrialization process. Allowing foreign enterprises to stay would leave behind the seeds of industrialization, which was absolutely unacceptable. Therefore, they must be driven away. That is why, after 2014, the operating environment for foreign enterprises began to deteriorate. In terms of data, the number of employees in foreign-funded enterprises peaked at 29.63 million in 2013 and then turned downward. By 2022, it had already dropped to 22.78 million, a decrease of 23%. However, this decline is not enough. It has not come close to the requirement of eliminating the seeds. Therefore, in 2023, the operating environment for foreign enterprises further deteriorated. A series of combinations such as the anti-espionage law, tax investigations, information security checks, etc., were rolled out, and this accelerated the pace of foreign enterprises fleeing. The financial foreign enterprises in Shanghai have basically run out. By the third quarter of 2023, foreign direct equity investment in China has turned negative at minus 11.8 billion yuan. It can be predicted that in the coming years, except for a very small number of foreign enterprises that cannot withdraw, all other foreign investments will withdraw from China. The fourth thing to do was to get rid of the dependence of foreign exchange for the insurance of the renminbi. For a long time, the main way to issue renminbi has been to exchange foreign currency, which in turn has led to the formation of the so-called funds outstanding for foreign exchange in Chinese central bank's assets. Funds outstanding for foreign exchange are the amount of domestic currency that a central bank issues in exchange for foreign exchange assets. Since renminbi is not a freely convertible currency, foreign investment must be converted into renminbi before it can be circulated. This requires the government to invest a large amount of funds to help foreign investors convert the foreign currency into renminbi. This is what is known as funds outstanding for foreign exchange or foreign exchange holdings. In 2000, before China's entry into the WTO, the ratio of foreign exchange accounted for was only 37.6%, and it peaked at 83.3% in 2013, meaning that in 2013, the central bank's assets were basically all derived from foreign exchange. The situation then took a turn in the opposite direction, with the ratio of foreign exchange reserves falling rapidly to 51.5% in 2022 and 49.9% in November 2023, i.e., finally dropping below half. From this point on, foreign exchange account holdings no longer held an overwhelmingly dominant position among the central bank's assets. This also meant that the credit of renminbi was no longer strongly tied to foreign exchange credit. While the ratio of foreign currency account holdings has declined sharply, the ratio of central bank lendings to commercial banks has risen sharply from 4.1% in 2013 to 38.6% in November 2023, and the ratio of central bank lendings The central bank's lending to commercial banks is a form of money printing known as debt-based anchoring. In other words, the People's Bank of China prints base money and lends it to commercial banks. Commercial banks then lend this money to people to buy homes, to businesses to produce goods, and most importantly, to the government to fund infrastructure projects. The quality of these debts is very poor, which also means that the credit base supporting the renminbi is very poor. However, it is crucial to remove the foreign exchange factor from the mechanism for the insurance of China's currency, which is a necessary step for deindustrialization. So CCP would not hesitate to devaluate the currency to the level of the early years of the reform and opening up of the country. But it is not easy because China's manufacturing sector is very strong in earning foreign exchange surpluses. For example, in 2020, China's trade surplus in goods was 535.1 trillion US dollars. In 2021, it was 676.5 trillion US dollars, and in 2022, it was as high as 877.6 billion US dollars. And in 2023, the trade surplus dropped to 823.22 billion US dollars. What can be done with such a large trade surplus? What I can tell you is that the foreign trade surplus of more than 3 trillion in the past 4 years has completely disappeared from China's financial data. That is, you can't find out where these dollars have gone in China's various financial data. Last year, a Chinese writer and YouTuber revealed that this huge amount of foreign exchange was put into a special fund called the Rejuvenation Fund by the CCP authorities to finance future wars. I talk about this issue in my show. If you haven't watched it, please go back to take a look. Whether this information is true or not, the money has disappeared from the figures of China's financial system. Well, so far, are you surprised or shocked? Tell me what you think in the comment area, and I will continue to talk about this issue and what will likely happen in the future if the CCP has indeed been intentionally destroying China's economy. That's all for today. If you feel like signing up for a membership or making a donation, please visit my website at jenniferzengblog.com. Otherwise, please help me spread the word by subscribing to my channel or sharing my videos. Thank you. See you next time.